In this chapter, we're going to unfold our character. Just to be really clear on what this is, a UV map is simply a 2D representation of our 3D object. And this can be a bit tedious if you don't understand the concept of it, but I'll try to cover it here. This is not going to be introduction to the UV tools in Modo. You're going to just have to read up on documentation on that. But this will be a pretty decent introduction to how to actually use the tools. And the principles here are universal. If you're using Maya, Max, or whatever, we're using the same principles. So we're going to do exactly what we did before with the read topology. We're going to export out everything on the lowest level out. So subtool, and we could just export from here. But there is a neat little trick here, which is C plugin, and subtool master, and low res visible. This will just take all your subtools and just make them the lowest resolution you can. So same thing as before, disable group and put them somewhere which is logical to you. I'm going to follow the exact same naming convention as before. So this would be on a 3D geometry from ZBrush, and I'm going to call this 402. And just call it the same as the object is called. This again keeps it very nice and clean. Disable group. Actually, we're not going to do both the eyes. We're just going to do one eye and just duplicate it over. So I don't need the right eye here. Just going to do the left. And buttons as well. We're also just going to unfold one button and just copy the UVs from one to another. We could do the same thing with the eyes as well, but I'm just going to show you different techniques. So this is all of them. And we just open up Modo. We go to File, Import. But just to be absolutely sure as well, I'm just going to go to Project. From ZBrush. UV2. I just want to just make sure that the material files are deleted. Just keeps it cleaner. And now we can just load all of them. Hit Ctrl A to select them all and just hit open. And just hit OK for this. It's all right. I'm going to bring the meshes out of their item, or sort of the group, and just name them properly. Again, keep this clean from the very start. So you can see some of these items here now have like a 2 next to them. This is because the naming was identical to the group, and you can't have double naming like that. So just be aware of that. That's also why I deleted the group for some of them before. So all right, let's just talk really quickly about why we didn't unfold this while we were retopologizing. So I briefly mentioned this before, but let's say your model is unfolded, and then you do this kind of stuff in ZBrush. That means that your UVs are now going to be massively stretched. This is a huge problem because the texture is now not going to distribute equally along here, and you're going to have stretched textures. So by doing the UVs after our design phase, after we know the proportions are locked, we minimize stretching. And as mentioned earlier as well, by doing it like this, you're not afraid to do these changes here. I mean, you could, in theory, now go over and just do all these crazy changes here without being afraid of having to redo UVs. Because the moment you have to redo UVs, or the change requires that you redo UVs, you're not going to do it. It's just more work for you. So I'm going to start with the shirt, just so we can do it from top to bottom. Also go to the UV edit view. You do this by Control Tab, and you can just go to UV Edit. disable the grid plane, and also just save the scene. So this is just under Control S. And again, save it so it makes sense. This would be uvsMODO. Also, when saving, there's a quick thing here as well. Is I have two separate folders. I have one for models, which is well where I put the models, and then one for scenes, which this would be lighting and all that. This is a really quick tip for you. So we're going to start with this. And this is no sculpting on it as well. So this means, this is a quick tip as well, or quick note. If this does not have any sculpting on it, which it doesn't, we can go crazy and just like add loops and all that. We could totally add a loop there and go crazy without any ramifications because it has no sculpting on it. However, if we do something like this, if you keep adding loops to this, it's not going to transfer seamlessly over. So just to be clear on this, if you have sculpting on your model, you do not want to change the vert order. If we do just UV-map this one, we can import it into Modo, into ZBrush again, and it's going to snap perfectly back to it. You're not even going to notice anything has changed. However, if you change the vert order, which simply just means you add a loop, you delete an edge. If you did modify the topology in any way, you're going to have a bad time in ZBrush. Then you're going to have to reproject it like we did in the previous chapters. But let's just start with this. When doing clothing, I try to put the seams where seams would be in real life for clothing like this. That said, we can't do this perfectly because real clothing doesn't have two sides like this. I mean, it's just one-sided because it's made of real materials. But when we're doing this, I'm trying to just keep it clean. You can do an unfold of this and you'll see what happens. So just select the seam here, select the seam you want, and then you just hit unfold. So now you can just see what happens. And this here might be fine. This might be perfectly fine. Let's just see how it's stretched. And to do this, we just need an image of a UV map or a checker. You can get this online by simply Googling something like UV checker. I have one here, which is really nice. I believe this also ships with Modo. So just take this here and just drag this into the shader tree, like so. And now you can see it has a checker on it. And this is the way we really check that our UV map is unfolding properly. And to change the amount of repetitions it's going to have, we just click on the plus sign here. Then we get to the texture locator. Just drag it up, and now you can see horizontal and vertical wrap. I prefer to set this to 7. This is a little pro tip for you. If you just type a number and Control Enter, you can see it changed for both of them. So if you want to change like 99, just hit Control Enter and boom. Really handy. So this is probably fine for what we want to do. Normally I would probably add a split here as well. But honestly, this here is fine. So we're just going to leave it. We're just going to leave like this, and we're going to do the layout later on. As a thing here, though, we're going to use multi-tile workflow, which means we're going to use the uvsMODO system. The uvsMODO system simply means that we never work in negative space. This is the way Mario works, and this is also the way we're going to use it doing the ZBrush as well. So this means that this first tile here is 1001, 1002, all the way up to 1010. Then it starts at 1011 again here. We don't use any of the old school UV conventions like Mudbox and ZBrush uses originally, which would be like U. This would be something like U or V -1 and U1. We're not going to use any of this. We're going to stick to uvsMODOs. UvsMODOs are easy and nice. If you're unsure about uvsMODOs, just do a quick Google search for uvsMODOs. Just spelled exactly that, U-D-I-M. And before we can start really with the UV workflow, we need to just go into the options, properties. Then we need to set the U high span, which is this, the horizontal one, and then the V high span to 10. I'm just going to show what happens when we do this. So now this is the default. This is what we have here. We can move stuff around, but we don't really know which UV it's in. So again, just go here, properties, set this to 10, and then 10. We can also just set this to 0. We don't need this at all. So this is now the workspace we're going to use. So one of the points of this tutorial here is we need to look into how UDIMs work. Before we had UDIMs, you would most likely do this in a single, like all this in a single tile. So you would scale this down here and you would have the head around here, maybe some arms here or whatnot. Problem with this is there isn't enough texture resolution for it. So let's say we have a camera. We're doing like a render test or something. This is going to be in shots. And the camera is here. A simple 2K map isn't going to fly. Even if we rest this up to like 4K, it might hold up, but then we go this close here, and a 4K is going to break, most likely. So the way we do this is we can't just keep scaling up the model indefinitely, or scaling up the texture map, because it would just be too heavy. So instead what we do, we split it up into separate texture maps, which is a really clever way of doing it. It simply just means that you can split the head into like 2 texture maps, which is what we're going to do here. So in total, we're probably going to have about 6 texture maps for all of them. Meaning the head is going to be here in 1001 and 1002. Shirt is going to be here, hair is going to be here, and eyes are going to be in a separate UDIM by themselves. And this keeps it really nice and clean. And this is the way you do it if you work in Mari. So we can now just select this here and just move it up to like something like 1003. Don't worry too much about the layout. We're going to do a separate layout pass later on. I just want to move it out of the way. So let's move on to the eye. So the eye now has 2 pieces of geometry. The outer shell, which is this, which is the cornea. The cornea is not going to have any textures on it whatsoever, at least not in this case. You might want to have some light bumps on it if you're going for photorealism, but in this case it's absolutely overkill. So we're just going to unfold this, like so. So it's never going to have any texture maps. We're going to have nasty overlapping UVs, like you can see here. This is not pretty at all. This is not even close to acceptable if you're going to paint on it. But we're not going to paint on it. This is going to be simply a transparent shader. This is going to have a glass shader on it. So here I would simply just paint black in the texture map. So just move this out of the way and just hide it. Now we're going to select the inner part here. And all up to this point here, this is also going to be completely black, meaning I will not care about the texture map for this. So again, just hit unwrap and just move it out of the way. Then we can also hide it. When I UV map something, I prefer to hide it afterwards. This just keeps it a lot cleaner for me, and I know I'm not going to accidentally unfold it twice. And also, if you're wondering about the settings here, we'll just get into them very quickly afterwards, because they're not that relevant for this, because this is very simple unfolding. We're going to get into them when we're doing the actual head. So just grow the selection a bit. Again, the way I do this is just select 2 loops, or 2 polys, hit the L key for loop, and then, like I said before, I remapped grow selection to Shift X, because now we can just do this with one hand. So I want the iris here to be a separate shell, because this just keeps it a bit easier for me. And keep in mind, when we're going to texture this is not going to be textured in Photoshop. This is going to be textured in 3D space, which means we can split this up pretty much as we want to. Normally I would paint everything in Mari, so the way it's laid out is almost irrelevant. We still need a nice layout, because that's going to help us a lot, but we're not going to care too much about it. So just hide this guy. And if you unfold this guy now, we're going to have a mess. It's going to look like this. So what we need to do, we need to split this in half. So I'm going to just select these. And grow the selection. Again, Shift X for me, or if you're on default mode, use Shift and up and down arrow. But that's just a bit too slow for me, because I actually have to move my right hand. And when we do selections like this all the time, having to move your right hand is annoying. So just unfold it to default settings. And you can now see it has a pretty decent unfold here. And just hit double click it, select it. And now we only have this part here left. So just hit unfold, unwrap, and there we go. When doing this, you do have several options as well. You can choose angle-based or conformal. For this, it doesn't matter a whole lot. Angle-based seems to give better results. Also, as the initial projection, setting to planar here is fine. I prefer to use group normal, which is pretty much the same as planar here, to be honest. And use curve map also gives nice results. But it doesn't really matter as long as you're not using something still like cylindrical or spherical for this. So you can now see it's a bit stretched, like it's a bit more oval here. So we can fix that by simply just scaling up. Or we can use the UV relax tool. Here you also have a couple of settings. Conformal here is probably fine. It's not fine, it turns out. Let's try angle based. Alright, it's still not perfect, so we can just simply scale it up. So I'm going to scale it up so it fits perfectly inside this square. Again, it's not essential that it's perfect, because we're going to paint this in 3D. So to relax it, let's see if some of the other settings will work better. Alright, so this works pretty well. Now it's a pretty nice and even shell here. And I do find the MODO unfolding tools to not be the best, to be honest. If I want to be perfectly honest, I find UV Master and ZBrush to be pretty good, and the unfolding tools on Maya have also really improved recently. So for more complex things, I will realistically not use MODO for this, because it's just a bit too slow for me, to be honest. And the unfolding is sometimes a bit shabby. So just unhide everything. Hit U to unhide it. And this guy here we don't care about, because this is going to be black again. So just hit H. Same this guy here, we're not going to care too much about it. Just relax a little bit, just because. Alright, just trying to keep it a bit cleaner. Alright, so what you can do now is you can pack the UVs. Just simply hit pack and use default settings and hit OK. What this is going to do is it's going to pack it into reasonably evenly spaced out shells like this. So this layout is not terrible. This layout is actually pretty good. That said, I want more UV space where I'm going to see which of the areas which are going to be visible the most. So this guy here can be scaled up a bit. Oh, sorry, this guy here can be scaled up a bit. This way I have slightly more UV space with this. You want to be careful with this though. You usually want the entire object to have the same UV scale, because if you tile something across a Mari, it's going to have different scaling for this. So let's say you tile like a cloth pattern over this or some kind of procedural pattern. It's going to have the same scale all around here, and then it's going to look smaller here. But for this is fine. I just want some more resolution in this region here. And let's just move this over. Let's say this guy here is working perfectly now, and it's perfectly inside 1001, meaning the first square or first tile. And we want to move it over to something like 1004. The way we can do this, we can of course just move it over here, which is fine. But then we have to go in and really fiddle with it again. What we can do instead is we can simply just hit the move tool, W, and we can just type the U position and set 4. And now it's going to go right there. And now we can duplicate it over. We can mirror this over to the other side, which is just select the item, hit Shift V, and it's gonna appear. All right, let's try this again. All right, there we go. So the tool is now over here, and this should be snapped pretty much perfectly. You can just hit toggle background shading. Wait, this is Control 1. You get up this menu. So you can toggle wireframe and background shading, all that. So if we hide this guy now, we're going to see one thing. which is it's perfect, except that it's mirrored. The reason it's mirrored is because we mirrored it over, which makes sense. So we need to mirror this back. The way we do this is just select the entire thing again. And select this. And now we need to just mirror it over. So use mirror UVs. And the annoying thing here is you're going to see it's going to mirror it all the way over here. The way you can fix this is we can obviously just move it over here and see how many UDIMs it is. And this is about 9, so we can just hit 9. And now we get perfectly mirrored UVs. Or we can just hit mirror, which is here, and with options. Sorry, let's undo this. Mirror UVs with options. And then instead of center 0.5, we can set it to 4.5. And it's going to mirror perfect like this. And now we can just move it 1 over. So when you're painting this in Mari, you just paint one map. Again, we're not going to use Mari, but this workflow works for Mari. So you just paint one map, and you copy it over to this UDIM, and you just mirror it over. You just flip it horizontally. So I apologize for mentioning Mari, but as we're going to texture this in ZBrush, but I would just want to be clear that this is a professional workflow. What we're teaching here is not a random concept artist workflow. It is a professional workflow. So this will work in a production. So that's the eyes done. Just call this our eye. And again, there's no sculpting in the eyes, so we can just easily mirror them over. Oh, we also have this guy up here, which again is going to be perfectly black, so I'm not going to care about this at all. Just move it here. Move this guy over here. So that's fine. That's fine for the eyes. Let's just hide all this. Actually, let's hide them. I hid them now using the H key. I want to hide them just by actually hiding them here. H key puts them into like a temporary toggle state. So if I hit the U key, it's going to unhide those again. I want to actually hide them. I want to control my visibility here. So the head is going to be a bit trickier. The problem with the head is it's a fairly sophisticated shape. So we can't just do a simple unfold. We have to know where to place the seams. Like for with cloth, it was just kind of like try something out and it works and gives us a nice unfold. But the head is a far more complicated shape. In the early days, you had to have a nice layout for this, because if you, let's say you had a seam right here, from here to here, you couldn't really paint across it because we didn't have 3D applications you could paint in 3D. Now, however, in the future, we can totally paint across this. So it honestly does not matter that much where our seams are. That said, it's still nice to have a layout which makes sense. We're going to split this into 2 UDIMs anyway, so we're definitely going to have a lot of seams. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the annoying bits. The annoying bits are something like the inside of the eyes, the nostrils, the inside of the mouth, and the ears. Then we can just focus on the head as one unit and really get a nice unfold. Enable the symmetry tool, because then we can select stuff symmetrically. So click it here. We're going to see one thing, as our mesh is asymmetrical in terms of shape. It might work fine for some pieces, but if I select this, you can see it's asymmetrical. So it's not going to work perfectly for us. But the clever guys at the Foundry have a solution, topology. So this, in theory, should work perfectly, because this looks at the topology, and the topology is absolutely symmetrical. Remember before when I said it was a good idea to keep your topology symmetrical? This is one of the reasons, because you can do tons of cool stuff with it, like symmetrical selection. So instead of having to select both sides, we can just select one side and it's fine. So I'm just going to get rid of this junk. And select it, then hit unwrap. Move it out and hit H to hide it. Just hit H on the keyboard. Inside of the mouth. And the reason we do this is it's just a lot easier to get a nice unfold when all this is cleared out. Because these areas will absolutely give us trouble. Do the same thing inside of the nose here. That's nice. And you can see why I remapped row selection, right? Because I use this all the time. This is so handy. Also, this is a cool thing in Modo compared to something like Maya. If you grow the selection here, you don't have to like hit it once and then hit it again. You can simply just hold it. So you can just grow selection by holding the key, which is really handy. So grow selection is your friend. Remap it to something else than shift up, down, up and down arrow. Move this out of our way, hit H. The ears, because they are annoying. And the good thing about doing this and doing painting in 3D using something like Mari or ZBrush is we really don't have to be that concerned about seams. Yeah, I screwed up there. I screwed up the selection. Apologies for that. I screwed up my undo order. I tried to be clever, but I was way ahead of myself. Let's see here. So what you can do in a case like this, where you have most of the things selected, let's say you just need to select this guy here. You can just grow your selection and then shrink your selection again. This works pretty well. Alright, just unfold this and move it out of the way. We're going to do this properly afterwards because we need proper airs. Although if we do it the way they are like right now, they're going to be stretched. They're not terrible, but they will give us stretching like this. And this is, honestly, this is probably acceptable for this tutorial, but we're going to do it properly. Okay, so that's pretty much it for removing the pieces. Now we're just going to try out a couple of cuts here. I want to place the cuts in regions where we're not going to have too much deformation, or we're going to see too much. Meaning this region here, I want to have no cuts in this region here. That said, we will probably have some cuts in this region here. In a professional pipeline, I usually cut off the nose as well to really unfold the nose properly. But we're not going to do it for now. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to split off this region here. I'm going to split off the neck region and the back of the head. So I can do this by selecting this and selecting this. And if I unfold now, it's going to unfold. It's going to give me this as a separate patch. But the problem is, it can't unfold it because there is no way to actually unfold this. There are no cuts here. So we need to have a cut down here. And now we can try it again. Now it should unfold relatively well. We might have to do an additional cut on the back here. We'll just try it. Just try it out first. So I think this might work fine. We just have to relax this as well. So double click it. Then we should UV relax. And adaptive seems to work really well in most cases. Though you can also try angle based. Adaptive is an older version, while angle based is a newer one. It works slightly differently. But angle based is significantly faster. So this is actually a pretty good unfold. You can see all the squares are fairly evenly distributed. There's some stretching here in the back of the head, but I'll not care at all about this region here as it's going to be completely covered by hair. Most of the time you don't need this region here to be really nice, as most of the time it's covered by hat, hair, or something. And also the fact that the camera is never really going to zoom into this region because it's not a region of interest. This, however, this region here, you want to put some love into. So let's say this is done here. We can just hide it. And now let's focus on this bit. I want to place a cut down here. And the way I place the cuts is same thing as before. Select an edge, hold down Shift, and then click right mouse button. This hotkey will only work if you're using 9.01 or more recent versions. Then I want to have a cut up here. And this pattern here seems to give me pretty good cuts in general. Put up here. So as I said, we're not going to be too concerned where we place our seams, because in 3D, if we do this properly with 3D painting, we're not going to have any seams issues. But it's still nice to have a layout which makes sense for us. So let's try this. Let's try this layout here. So this seems to be alright. There is some overlapping here, but we might be able to live with that if we do an unfold. Sorry, I relax. Let's just see. So as a first pass here, this looks pretty good. But we can see the issue we're having as well. The nose gets really stretched. So we might actually just have to do the nose as a separate unfold. Before we do that, before doing anything drastic, let's just relax this and see what happens. Try adaptive. And you can see again, adaptive is significantly slower. But it also tends to give me better results. Let's just see this. Some wonkiness here. Let's try this again. First do an unwrap using angle based, group normal. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what I did wrong here is I simply selected this and I unfolded it. This means I'm unfolding it based on not having any seams here. What we can do to select the seams is we can hit select UV border, and now we get all the seams again. So hit unfold. So this is actually pretty good. Using just the default angle-based method is pretty good. I'm just gonna have to fix this region here. Actually, let's see what happens if I just unfold again, just not having this cut there. Alright, so this seems to actually work better. I'm just gonna unfold again, just by not having this guy here, because this was just redundant. Alright, so now we're getting a pretty good unfold of the majority of the face. That said, I don't like the nose region. I'm going to separate out the nose and do that separately. So this is kind of cool. You can just select stuff in the UV view as well. Sometimes it's a lot faster to select stuff in the UV view than to do it in the 3D view. So I'm just selecting the regions which are stretched. I don't think I'm going to need this part. Yeah, the stretching starts around here. So let's try this again. And just unfold it and see what happens. Alright, still some stretching. Let's hide the head, and so we can just focus on this bit. I'm probably going to have to add another loop down here and down there, just to really make sure the unfolding is solid. So select the UV border, and let's add a loop here. Let's just make the loop go here, here, and here. Alright, this should provide us with a pretty good unfold. You relax this. So this relaxed now, we have a very nice and even unfold here for the nose. As I said, this is probably not necessary for this tutorial here, but it's just nice to have it be nicely unfolded. So you can now see there's obviously a hole here, and that's fine. We're not going to put this in here. This is going to be a separate bit. So okay, so this entire thing is fairly nicely unfolded now. The next thing I'm going to worry about is the ear. And again, we're not going to worry about the scale of anything right now. So just hide this. I'm going to hide everything but the ear. So just double click the ear, or just select the ears like this. Select UV border. So now we select all the seams. Hide the UV image. Now we can just try out a couple of seams or seam placements. And sometimes you just simply have to try it out. You may not work on first attempt, and that's fine. We're going to split the ear into two now. And then I guess we're also going to need a seam placement here, just to just really help out this hole here. Alright, let's see how this works. Alright, so there's no stretching at this point, which is nice. The way you can avoid stretching is, or when you're unfolding, you have two options. You have multiple pieces with no stretching, or have few pieces with stretching. I always prefer to have no stretching. Stretching is really, really bad. Particularly if you want to like tile something over this in 3D, or say in Mare, if you want to tile something across here. It's really important that there is no stretching. I would much rather have multiple pieces. And this is again a cool thing about having this symmetrical. Now, as this was a symmetrical model, I only had to select the seam on one part here. So select one ear, disable symmetry, select one ear, and then just move this up, just so it makes sense. Alright, I'm just going to move this slightly out of the way as well. So now you can see we have a head with pretty much no stretching at all. It's a bit messy in terms of the layout. Well, it's more than a bit messy, it's really messy. This current layout is absolutely useless because it's going negative UDIMs. But we're going to fix that. We're just going to use pack UVs. And there we go. Also, save your scene. Models and just UVs, call it UV2. All right. Let's lay this out a bit nicer. I'm going to focus mostly on this guy first. So the way this is going right now is it's going sideways. I want this to conform to the model. So I want this, if this here is the top, then I want this here to be the top, and this to be the bottom. This just makes it a bit cleaner. Let's just rotate it so this is approximately in the center. Now we're going to move to UDIM 2, of 1002 to be precise. Honestly, this model here will probably be fine in one UDIM, but just for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to put it in 1002, because there are some considerations we have to do when a model is split over multiple UDIMs. So, move this guy down here as well. Let's just remove the image as well. Let's see here. Because this is annoying me now. I don't want to have a texture here in the background because it's confusing me. I can't see my grid and it's just annoying. So the way we remove this is to go to Options, Show Image, and just disable this. So I want this to be as much in the center as I can, just for convention, because it's just nice to have it in the center. Then we have the ears. So select the ears here. Both of them. All right, let's bring them down. So I'm going to keep the right ear, or screen right ear, on the right side. And I'll judge this from a front view. This just makes it easier for me when I'm texturing. Now, as I want this to be symmetrical, I can, of course, just kind of match this up by hand and match it up. But it has a lot of advantages to have this as symmetrical as I can. Again, when painting in Mari, I only have to paint one ear, and then I can mirror it over. So this is just, again, a more professional workflow to keep it symmetrical. But the way we keep this symmetrical is you need to make sure it's matching. So I'm going to mirror it over on the Y, also on the U axis. So select it and mirror it over. Now it's going to be mirrored in the wrong way. That's fine, so now I can kind of match it up. This may not work perfectly though, because the unfolding might be different. Maybe the seam is a bit different as well in terms of cutting. Because maybe the unfolding, or maybe the symmetry wasn't perfect. Alright, so the unfolding wasn't perfect here. Let's just try to run an unfold again on this, or relax on this, just so it matches a bit better. And let's run the same thing here on this one. This is one of the advantages of doing the UVs on one side of the face, then mirroring it over, because then you know it's going to be absolutely symmetrical. But I prefer to keep it like this. I always prefer to have my UVs slightly asymmetrical like this, but matching the topology, at least if there are big changes to it. Obviously, if I have like 10 tentacles or something, I'm just gonna model one and texture one and just duplicate it around, and it's gonna be perfect. But in this case here, if it's just a head, I'm going to do it like this, even if there are discrepancies here. Let's just relax this guy here as well. Select only one. And this is caused by asymmetry in the shape, which is fine. Alright, so let's say this here is working perfectly now. Just select it. And now we can use the mirror tool here and just mirror it back. Mirror it on the U. And now we have a model here which is fairly symmetrical. Not 100%, but fairly symmetrical. If we were to do this for the body, I would keep the arms absolutely symmetrical, unless there are some like big deformation differences on them. But for the head, there is so much focus on the head. I want the UVs to match my model as close as I can, even if it means losing some rapidness when texturing. Then we have this stuff here. I'm not going to care too much about this. I'm not even going to care if this is properly unfolded, because this character is never going to open his mouth. Then this as well, the eye socket, just put it up here, and then find the remaining eye socket, put this down here, and now I'm completely eyeballing it. I don't care at all if this is symmetrical. I just keep it like kind of symmetrical because I think it's visually appealing, but I'm not going to actually care about it. Then we have the nose. So this layout here looks a bit weird, but this is a legit way of doing it. Because we have 3D painting today, and with 3D painting it is far more important to have no stretching than to have it in one piece. This layout here would not be acceptable 10 years ago, but as we're not 10 years ago, and we have access to something like Mari, Mudbox, and ZBrush, this is a better layout. And I use this professionally in VFX as well. Let's see the remaining two pieces. Interior of the nose. You probably want to make sure these make kind of sense, because you might actually see these regions here. Unlike the inside of the eyes, which you're literally never going to see, you might actually see these. So I'm just going to run a little relaxing on them. And do a bit of relaxing on this. So now we have a head layout which should work pretty alright. Let's just make sure it works here. Disable wireframe by hitting Ctrl 1 and toggling to the right. Oh, also as a quick note here as well, if you are in the view here and this is textured, you can see here what happens. This does not respect the wrapping. This is extremely annoying. So you have to make sure you use default. I don't even think advanced shaded texture works. I'm pretty sure only advanced or default or advanced works. I'm not going to use advanced because I don't think my graphics card actually supports it. But default should work fine for this. Default is what was formerly known as OpenGL. So you can now see this is a fairly quick layout, but we have it over 2 UDIMs and it's a very nice and clean layout. You could of course try to cram this in over here, but again for the purpose of this tutorial we're going to keep it nice, clean and over 2 UDIMs. Alright, that's it for the head. And the head is by far the most important bit here. So let's do the hair next. This is a bit annoying, as this is just a huge blob of polygons. But we're going to do it the exact same way as I did before. We're just going to select edges, and then we're going to unfold it. This is not going to be a hard one to do. It's just a bit tedious one. So pro tip when selecting edges is, this is something I haven't seen in any other application. You can select one edge, just hold the up arrow, and it's going to just keep on selecting edges here. This is really handy in situations like this. So I'm going to keep this mostly on the border here. Just make sure this goes over here. We're also just going to keep using the shift right mouse button, the select in between command. But the problem is sometimes it goes a bit funky. So it's really nice to have another tool in your arsenal, like select one, select the other one, and then select, and then the up arrow. This also has another magical feature, which if you select one and then select every other, is going to select every other. This simply just looks at the selection order you do, or the selection pattern you, and it just repeats that. Just gonna cut this across. I'm going to be brutal here. And this is one of my favorite features in Modo as well. And as I said, I haven't seen this in any other application. And I'm dying to get it in Maya as well. It's just one of these little things which makes life a lot easier in a lot of cases. Because if you had to select this one by one, you would lose your mind in about 34 seconds. So alright, this here will probably unfold relatively alright. Let's do it and I'll show you some of the issues we're going to have. So let's enable the texture here. Let's toggle wireframe. So we're going to have some stretching in some regions, simply because we just cut this in half instead of really cutting in some nice seams here. So again, select UV border. So what I want is, instead of just being in half, I want to just cut in some borders here, or some more edges. Enable wireframe. These edges here are simply just going to help our selection a little bit. Because we have some shapes here where this will benefit. And the more you do this, the more this is going to make sense. Initially, it's hard to know where the cuts are going to be, because unfolding is more like an abstract concept for you. at least in the beginning. But after a while, you just start to understand how the unfolding process works. And again, this was never meant to be a step-by-step tutorial. This is more a workflow tutorial. I'm not going to show where to place every single seam, because that would be absolutely ridiculous and you wouldn't learn anything from it. The main point here, I want a generally nice unfold of the entire thing. And as the mesh gets heavier, it takes longer to unfold, which makes sense. And when dealing with this as well, please save often, because I've had a lot of issues where MODO has just been crashing on me because the unfold has just not been very nice. So UV relax and then angle based, and let's see what happens. I will say though that the UV tools in MODO have improved substantially over the last couple of years. They used to be really slow, and they got a lot faster after, particularly after angle based was introduced here as a UV relax one. Still not 100%, but they're not terrible. They're not even close to terrible. Not my favorite, but they're pretty good. It's gonna sound weird, but Maya is actually my favorite when it comes to UVs. Okay, so this is a pretty nice unfold now. We have a fairly even unfold here for hair. Alright, let's just move the hair over to something like 1003. There we go. Alright, and then we have the buttons. The button's going to be a bit different because this is a hard surface object, and you would be a lunatic if you were to do every one of these. We're just going to do one, and then we're going to copy it over. What you could do as well is, instead of doing one and copying over, you could just create one button, UV map that one, and then copy the button. What we're going to do instead, just because I want to show you this, let's say you receive a model where all this is done. It's been rigged and everything, and there's absolutely no way you can change anything here. They need to be exactly in the same spot. So you need to simply just UV map one and then copy it over. So I'm going to hide these guys, and I'm going to do one. And you can see this obviously doesn't have any UV map, which is even close to functional. So I'm going to do a planar project, or planar unfold for this. Select this. Again, you see how much I use the grow select button. Super handy. And unfold this. And this is going to be fine. Just for this region here. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. And boom. And that's it. So the challenging bit is this part here. Normally you would use something like the UV peeler for this. And this miraculously, this time it worked. So we can see what happens here. UV peeler is amazing for this kind of work. Because what it's doing is, it's just giving you it's just really good for creating tubes. The problem with UV peeler is it's notoriously unreliable. I tried this exact model a couple of times now, and it works sometimes. Now it seems to work. When I tried it, it did not work at all. So what I'll do instead is I'll simply use the unfold tool. Then I'll use the rectangle tool here. And the rectangle tool is the best thing ever. It's really cool. So I'm just going to select an edge here, an edge loop, and then unwrap. So what we're going to get is going to get this tube here. Let's see if rectangle works on this. It does. So what it's doing is, first off, absolutely black magic. This is one of the coolest UV tools I've ever seen. So we have this now, and this is just a very rough unfolding. And even if this had no stretching, which it does, but let's say it didn't, you can't leave like this. Because as I'm a texture artist, and I want to texture on this. Let's say you want to have a line which goes like this. It has some kind of decal or something going like this. There is absolutely no way I can paint this. Like, try to paint like this in the UV view. You just can't do it. You will get like nasty results, really nasty results really quickly. So what we need is, we need a absolutely straight edge. So I can just hold down the shift key in painting applications and just drag a line across here. And that's going to give me a perfect line. If you're a modeler and you give me this texture artist, I'm going to like slap you. So this is really bad stuff. But the magic of rectangle works. Boom. This is absolutely magic. So just rotate it around so it fits. And this is perfect. If you were to give me this, I can just paint a single stroke across here and it's going to be easy peasy to texture. So select this guy here. Now we can just hit pack UVs and just pack it down. All this nastiness here, which is the other buttons, I'm going to just hide, not delete, just hide. And the pack tool mode is pretty cool because all of these are now have the same scale. So let's just move all this down here. Rotate it so it makes sense. And you really want to have clean UV maps as much as you can. Rush the UV map and particularly hard surface UVs, and the texturing will suffer a lot. Let's just move this down here a little bit. I'm going to scale this down as well because I want this tile here to fit like 4 buttons. Alright, now one is done. So this is pretty cool. We can now simply just transfer this to the other ones. So just hit, this is the source and this is the target. And now we go to edit UVs and just hit transfer UV positions. Now you can see this is the exact UV position here. Do the same thing here. And I believe this works with multiple objects as well. So select one, then another, and then another. And then we just hit edit UVs and transfer UV positions. And it does. So you first select your source. This is the one you want to transfer from. Then you select target, target, and target. And then you just hit transfer, which is under edit and transfer. You can also just select this one and select copy UV position, then select the target and then hit edit and paste UV positions. This is an extremely powerful tool. So please just learn to use this. Now I just want to duplicate this around a bit. I'll just move them around. So we're going to move them up like so. Hide this, move it up like so, and again, unselect this and move it up. So this is wonderful. Now I can just paint one texture here and copy it over like this. So a lot of you might be thinking now, and this is a question I had before as well, before I start working on this. Why did you duplicate them around like this? Why not just keep them in one UV, out like in as one overlapping UV here? Because this means if you paint something here, it's going to be identical in all of them, which is going to speed up the workflow a lot. Because if we do it like this and we move it up, now you have to duplicate it over every single one. You paint one, then you have to copy it over. So you're asking why do you even do this step here if you have to copy it over? Well, the reason is if you want variation on them. Let's say you assume it's fine, that all these here need the exact same patterning or detailing. That's fine, but what if you get some feedback which says, hey, can you change this button here a little bit? Just like some variation here. You can't do it. You literally can't do it without changing the UVs. So let's say you have a pattern, you have some kind of bump, which right there it's nicked. There's a little like bump here. And you paint this on this one. Every single button gets the same bump map. So one of the ways we can see something in CG is if there is repetition. By doing like this, it allows us to paint each button individually, which breaks repetition. At least it allows us to break repetition. So when painting this, I'll do one of these. I'll do one button here, then I'll copy it over, and then I'll add variation to each of them, which brings out a lot more life. We can see a problem here though. It goes outside the UDIM. So we just need to scale the entire thing down, so it fits inside one UDIM. Actually, I'm going to scale this down quite a lot, but let's just wait with that. I'm just going to move this up here, because I'm going to put this in the same UDIM as the shirt. because this would be crazy to have as a separate, you know, this, if we were to paint this, this would be an 8K map. I always paint an 8K, just because I can. And it would be absolute lunacy to have this as an 8K map, considering we're going to be looking from this distance here. We could probably get away with like a 512 map for this. But that said, this is a nice layout. And that's pretty much it for all the pieces here. Now we just have to combine them into one. Before we do that, I need to just show you a quick feature here. Let's say we have this guy here selected. This can be extremely annoying. Let's say everything is, or this thing here is in 1001. You see the clutter? You have the head, and then we have the hair on top. This can be extremely confusing, particularly if you have multiple things, like we have the shirt as well. Let's say we put the shirt here. You see the clutter we get right away? I can't distinguish the hair and the face right now. So there is a little guy here, which is show inactive UVs. This is something they added fairly recently to Modo, and it's wonderful. Before you had to hide the additional items. Now you can just hit enable or show inactive UVs, and they're going to be hidden. Only the selected one is going to be shown here. That said, for this we want everything to be visible because we're going to lay them out. So I want to see all this. So let's just move the hair. So this is 1001 for the head, 1002 for the neck, 1003 for the hair, and then let's just do 1004 for the shirt. And one thing we didn't do is we didn't really lay this out nicely. Currently it's a bit messy. So I just want this here to be a bit more, make a bit more sense. By more sense, I mean, for instance, make it symmetrical. Because currently it's not symmetrical. Like, let's say it's like this. I want the center line to be, well, center. I want it to be around the 0.5 axis, which is this guy here. If you go down, you can see the 0.5 axis. You can see 0.4, 0.6, and then this must be 0.5. So let's just do this. Select this guy and just rotate it like so. Select this guy and just rotate it like so. We can also just scale up a bit, because we're not utilizing the UV space. Scale up a little bit more. Actually, I think we could split this up even once more. I think I want to cut around here as well. Let's just enable symmetry. No, we can't enable symmetry because this is not a symmetrical mesh. So like, no, actually this is fine. We don't have to split up even more. Never mind. This here is actually fine for this example. Because this again is, I mean, this is what it is. It's a bust. It doesn't really have proper cloth here or anything. For a production model, I would split this up more. I would split this up based on how real cloth is. So just like find some garment, find like a sweatshirt or a sweater, t-shirt, something like that, and look at the seams, where the seams are. And that's also how I decide to split up a human being when it comes to the UVs. Let's say this was an entire human being with like arms and torso here and all that. The way I find the seams on the human here is, imagine he has clothing on him. Where would I put the seams on his cloth? So this would be like just around the shoulder here, probably on the back side of his arm, down the torso and the sides here. Essentially exactly where the seams are on his clothing. So alright, we can now just move to the buttons. And we're going to scale this a lot down. We want to have this pretty much the same texture resolution on the buttons as we do for the shirt. Scale up a bit like this. And we can rotate them around as well. So I prefer that when I even up something that it's straight up and down. This is the same thing for the head as well. I prefer this is straight up and down. Obviously this is not possible for everything, but as a general guideline, I prefer the stuff is straight up and down. This just makes it easier when I want to tile stuff across. So now we can see here that we have a fairly decent layout for this. And so this is over 6 UDIMs. So 1001, 1002, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this is the way I do it in production. Obviously, I spend more time on it. You know, first off, the model is more refined. This is a fairly simple model. Same on this. The models here are simple, and I would have more complexity in them. But also, I would spend more time on, you know, the layout and all that. Placing seams a bit better. But this works. You know, the way we laid out the nose here, for instance. This is legit. I would do this in production as well, because it gives you no unfolding. Oh, sorry, it gives you no stretching. Ooh, I just realized the nose is upside down. This just looked like the shape of a nose. So I just realized this is upside down. Good catch. There we go. So before we just call this done, I just want to evaluate it. I just want to go over it and make sure there are no real nasty faults in it. And by nasty faults, I mean stuff being flipped horizontally or mirrored over. I want everything here to be red normally. I don't want anything here to be red in the mirror, which means this is really easy it's a really easy mistake to do. So for instance, this, it looks fine in UV, but it's not fine because it's mirrored here. I want this to be fine. So like this. We can also just try a feature here called show distortion. This can also be really nice just to show where there is distortion on the model. Sometimes you have really nasty distortion. As normal, red means bad. And like we talked about, the red is on the back here. And you can see the distortion. But I don't really care, because this is where the hair is. This is never going to be seen by anyone. But it can kind of be a nice way to debug the model as well. Ideally, you want everything to be this kind of greenish color. Blue means there's not enough space, or sorry, there's too much space. And red means there's enough space, I believe. So let's just go through the various pieces and see how the stretching is. So there's literally or virtually no stretching on this. The eyes have a little bit of stretching here. Not really a problem there. Same with this eye. The head we already checked, and let's check the hair. The hair is not terrible. There are some bad regions, but honestly this hair is fine. And then buttons as well. The buttons are probably going to be, yeah, the buttons are almost completely stretch free. Because this is a hard surface object, and it's done more in a mathematical sense than just like unfolding it. So that's pretty much it for the unfolding as such. Let's bring this into ZBrush, and I'll just show you really quickly how to make sure this is going back into ZBrush in a very seamless manner. So we do the same thing as before, select all of them, here, and right click, export selected layers, set OBJ, separate files, and then we hit OK. Go into your directory, uvsMODO, 3D, geometry, and this would be ZBrush base OBJ, and this is release 03. And now we just have to click yes to a couple of these. Alright, let's just make sure that these all exported now. ZBrush, see here. 3D, geometry, ZBrush base OBJ, release 3, and there we go. Again, delete all these annoying things here. Also, UV temp 02, this is This is the checker picture. Delete this one. And I'll show you the cool way to bring this into ZBrush again. The way we do this is we go to the lowest level. We already have the lowest level available, so this is fine. So in ZBrush, it's very simple to just make sure this model here will get the UVs we just made in Modo. We just go to Tool, Import. I'm going to use my little button here because it's easier. Tool, Import. Find the object you just did, or you just export it out, and make sure it's in the correct one. It's really easy to screw this up and import the OBJ you just exported out from ZBrush. Then hit Head. And now you can see there's like a subdividing geometry here, but nothing visually has happened because it has identical vert order. Because we didn't change the model at all, we only did the UVs. So if we hit Morph UVs now, we can now see that, boom, it has UVs. And the reason we get this nasty overlapping here is because ZBrush does not support multiple UDIMs in this space here. So if you have like 30 UDIMs and you morph the UVs, it's going to just go absolutely haywire. And it's going to give you all of them in the same space. And you have Morph UVs under Tool, UV Map, and Morph UV. I just put it in here as well because it's a really nice way of testing that the model has UVs. So you do the same thing for everything here. So this includes the hair. Again, just make sure you're on the lowest level. Tool, Import. Make sure in the right one. Hair. Shirt. So this is an issue we have sometimes in ZBrush. You see what happens here? The scale is off. This is an extremely annoying issue in ZBrush. Scale should never be off. So if you do this, let's test this again. We do shirt, and now it's fine. So you see what happened there? This is a bug in ZBrush where the scale goes haywire sometimes. Suddenly it just goes off the scale. And ways to fix this is you can restart ZBrush, or you can just retry the operation. I honestly don't know why this keeps happening. It's an extremely annoying issue, and it's caused me a lot of headache. But it seems like restarting ZBrush does work. If this hadn't worked, if just redoing the operation here hadn't worked, I would have simply just duplicated the duplicated this guy and just imported onto this. And just imported the shirt again. Because the shirt didn't have any sculpting on it, so it would have been fine to import like this again. If it did have sculpting, and nothing worked, if the scale was just all off, I would just go to the star again, duplicate it, import it back into the star, because then it would work. The bug is when you import something into a different tool like this, or into an already existing tool. So import it back into this again, and just reproject it the way I showed you in a former video. It's an extremely annoying bug, but there is just nothing you can do about it. So delete this guy. So shirt is fine. And for the eyes, I'm just going to delete both the eyes and import them in again. Because there is no sculpting on them and they have no UVs. So duplicate, hit it twice. And hit import, and left eye, and then right eye. And then buttons as well. And again, same bug as before. Scale is off. So let's try this again. So import. Let's try buttons again. Alright, it's still off. Let's try again. If this doesn't work, then we just have to... Alright, it still doesn't work. So the buttons, the way to fix the buttons is to delete it and duplicate this guy up, put it on the bottom, and then we just import it again. And there we go. Again, simply a bug in ZBrush, and you might encounter this as well. It happens to me every once in a while. Normally it's fine, but just once in a while it just goes stupid. So the cool thing about this is we just UV mapped the model and we preserved all the subdivision levels. So that's really nice. So nothing really changed in our model. We just preserved all the nice subdivision levels and all the nice details here on all the models. So if we were to like export a displacement map from this right now, it would work really well. So with that said, save the tool, Control S, if you're mapped to Control S. And I always, whenever I've done the UVs for this, I always just call it UVs.